Do they even want to see us sing? So we're going to get them tapped into an advocate as quickly as possible. What we'll do is have them come into an intake room. And in here, we are going to spend time with them and figure out their story, their needs. First and foremost, we're always going to look at safety. Whatever it is we're looking at, are they safe?
I've noticed the front door is locked at all times. That factors into that. So that's something that you share with them as well when they come in.
Right. So it's are we safe? If not, how are we going to address that? Do we want to report whatever's happened? Because we're also going to make that call to start getting law enforcement to transition and come over and assist with that. And then, are we going to need the same nurse? And depending upon what falls out with all of that, we're going to go from there. So those are going to be our immediate needs. Okay. This is our exam room for peds. Again, even a child is going to direct their exam, their comfort level, what they will or will not allow a nurse to do. It's going to be least invasive as possible. A lot of times people have this impression that when a child comes in and they're doing a forensic medical exam, it's going to be this big, oh my gosh, throw your legs in the stirrup kind of thing.
And that's not true.
That is not true. No. And that's something that we really kind of need to tamp down and get parents, foster parents. And that's something that Emily and Shane himself have been working on and training with, especially our foster parents and health and welfare, is what does this look like when these children come here? And taking the fear away from the parent, helping them understand this process, and working through that.
And part of that process too that's really important, you mentioned it, is that the child directs this. And although you have the guardian or the parent giving consent for this procedure, the same nurse isn't going to do anything that child doesn't assent to.
No.
So they have to be comfortable and cooperative for us to proceed with this exam, because our goal is to prevent further traumatization to this child.
Right. Right. Our goal is any person who comes through that front door, regardless of what we do, they're comfortable coming back should they have a need or a desire.
Exactly.
Comfort is it.
It's part of what keeps them safe.
Correct. The other thing that I think is interesting, especially for sex assault nurse examiners these days, too, is that their scope of specialty is broadening.
It is.
And so, like, you see mannequins here, and that is because our nurses are being trained, and some of them have already been trained, to also do forensic medical exams on strangulation victims.
Independent of sexual assault.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Domestic violence victims. Unfortunately, in our area, we have seen more felony domestics with egregious injuries. And so instead of sometimes going back to the ER or going to an urgent care because they may not have a primary doctor, they can come here for follow-up. And also a component of that can help with their criminal case, if they're consenting to that, is that photographs and other documentation that the prosecutor can use can also be added into that process. And our nurses aren't opposed to going to court. They understand that could be very likely.
And that is part of their training.
It is part of their training.
And so what we're seeing is that sane nursing has always been kind of under the umbrella of forensic nursing, but the focus kind of had been on sane.
Correct.
And now we're seeing that expansion to say, let's really look at forensic nursing more than just that sexual assault exam.
Correct.
That the nurses who've been trained to take those forensic photographs, to have that patient-centered, trauma-informed approach, it just makes sense that they are the ones that are expanding that field.
Correct. Yeah. And so that's been exciting too. And that's something that we as an MDT on child abuse cases, as a SART on adult cases, have been looking at how do we better utilize those services in these cases that we are seeing coming through our system, and the documentation, and creating baselines, especially in children. And are we starting to see chronic abuse on a particular child? and having that in one space where everybody knows where that is and we can kind of monitor that process.
So that's a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is the SART MDT, kind of talking. I know that at one time that was a combined team and now it's been kind of split apart. Can you talk a little bit about what went into that decision and what maybe some of the challenges that you see with forming a SART and the benefits?
So when I started working these investigations, we had no victim advocacy. That was not, we didn't have that in our police department. We didn't have a relationship even with our community partners the way we needed to. I started working with our domestic violence shelter. They had people who were on call. I actually had one of my interns. I ran the intern program for the Nampa Police Department for several years, and one of my interns didn't want to become a law enforcement officer. And we were kind of building our victim witness program when she was doing her internship with me. Just, these are the gaps. These are the things that if I'm focusing on my investigation, victims aren't getting this communication. They're not getting the update. They're not getting the information they need because I'm being pulled in a different direction. How can we close that gap so we can better provide for the people that we are serving? And so it really developed out of that, which then just continued to grow with what we were doing with the Justice Center, with our community-based advocates and our systems-based advocates, working with the prosecutor's office advocates, and really just learning how, as a community of professionals, we needed to come around and support the people that we were serving.
So tell me a little bit more about the Nampa Family Justice Center, because I do think it was groundbreaking at the time that you
Yes.
started this. It's still a fantastic program for our state and our community.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about how it's structured and
So
how it
the
works.
Nampa Family Justice Center is, if you will, a one-stop shop. We have co-located our Crimes Against Persons unit from the Nampa Police Department, adult probation, our counseling services for sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking. All those counselors are on site at our facility. We have advocates at the front that are community-based advocates who meet with the clients, walk alongside them with where they're at. Nobody forces them into making any type of decision. Our sexual assault nurse coordinator has office space at the Justice Center. She coordinates the teams of our nurses that work at 3 different hospitals. We have a partnership with the Department of Health and Welfare. Their Child Protective Unit is on site. And the list goes on and on. But the concept really is our previous model, we were wearing people down in the system. We were wondering why they didn't want to go forward, why they didn't want to leave an unhealthy relationship, why they didn't want to go forward with the process of a sexual assault investigation. And if you've ever walked in or walked beside somebody in that process, it is a system that is not geared towards our victims at all. And the Family Justice Center is really structured to provide safety, self-sufficiency, hope, and healing. With where they're at, we're not going to force them to do anything, but we're going to help them make informed decisions. We're going to talk to them about the resources. We're going to talk to them about what a sexual assault exam is. We're going to talk to them about what we can do and what we can do to help them. But we're going to help, they're going to be the ones who make those choices.
If you're newer and you're on the detective side, basically talk to your advocacy groups. So if you're not doing this informally, do it informally. Talk to them. Understand what their roles are. Talk to your scene nurses. That is huge. You have to have that relationship with your nurses to get that, especially to be on call in different places and be able to work with them. Understand it might be hours. You have to have that relationship. When you have those relationships, you're going to have a better working product to do that. So build those relationships. Build it with your prosecutor's office so you understand what they're looking for, what they see as holes in cases, so you can do things better. But you must build those relationships to get a much better working product for our victims.
So as you talk about communication being key and pivotal to the success of a SART, do you have any examples that you could share with us where maybe that communication went a little more outside that meeting room?
You bet. I am aware of some examples of that. We had a situation where we had a young victim of a sexual assault who it was preparing for the sentencing hearing, which is a good place to be, having secured a conviction. And she was nervous. She was having some problems. So our victim witness coordinator, Pam Milhouse, called over to the advocate, Treston Kerr, over at Domestic Violence Sexual Assault. And Treston was able to basically drop everything and come on over and help out making that victim comfortable just with the building, the physical surroundings, and the process that was going to occur. We had another case where we had a victim where instances had happened in multi-jurisdictions. And so it came to us reported from Montana originally, but then there was events that occurred here. And she was able to get a case filed, but also, and I almost want to say more importantly, and I'll expound on that in a minute, she was able to get access to services so that she could be successful long-term after the event itself was resolved through the courts. And I guess the biggest thing that when you talk about successes and things like that, the message that I think is given sometimes that I wish was a little bit different is that your ultimate success as a victim is if you have a case filed and a conviction secured and then someone held accountable in the criminal justice system. And it's very important. And I, as a prosecutor, want to do that to every offender that comes across my desk. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes the evidence is not there. Sometimes, you know, the nature of these is that these kind of things take place in private and they're not witnessed by hundreds of people, where, you know, like a traffic accident even, which is so minor, and this is such a big deal. But so the nature of them is like there's not a lot of really great evidence, especially if they're not reported right away. And law enforcement has good resources to, you know, even try and prove, and we have filed cases where events took place years and years ago, and I feel confident on those prosecutions. I made the charging decision on those cases, so I believe we have a reasonable likelihood of conviction. But we can't file every case. Sometimes the evidence just isn't there. And so I think that we can take from our SART program.
All right, everyone, we're going to enter another round of discussion. Matthew, Deb, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tyler. So we wanted to go first, I think, to our state DNA laboratory manager, Raylene Nallen. She joins us in this discussion as a panelist now. Raylene, we're getting a lot of comments in from our trace analysts in the room, our forensic scientists that are doing trace analysis, and such an important discipline, such an important element in this process. Tell us a little bit about where our state lab is on trace analysis, and then also if you could address the direct communication that's coming in, question from Lisa about communication, how we get information at the state lab about information on these cases.
Okay, I will start with the question about trace analysis. Our laboratory system does not currently offer trace analysis. However, all of our scientists are trained to recognize trace elements on items of evidence and to ensure the preservation of those items should the agency want to pursue trace analysis. We have some regional partnerships with other laboratories where we can offer that service at no cost to some of our agencies through those partnerships. And to answer the question about information, so I think we're all aware of the difficulties with human factors and with bias and trying to prevent that in the analyst level. With our agency, we do request that a case report come in, and in each of our sexual assault kits, we have a patient history form where the nurse conducting the examination fills out some lists of questions. Specifically, the information we're looking to target is that information that our analysts need to determine which items of evidence to focus on and to determine CODIS eligibility. It's important for us to have some information. It's definitely a difficult situation that I think a lot of labs are struggling with, and I think we have some work to go on that. Knowing that the national recommendations are to have a case manager who limits the amount of information and controls when analysts receive that information. And we're definitely working towards that model. But for right now, we do have to have some information in order to make CODIS eligibility determination.
Thanks, Raylene. Fantastic answers. And Adam is posting in the questions about the OSAC Materials Subcommittee response to the best practices. It would draw people's attention to that. Anytime our working groups in OSAC or any of the other working groups that we have as forensic scientists are making recommendations, we want to pay attention to those and make sure and work those into our best practices and our protocols in the laboratory. So fantastic comments. Thank you to all you trace analysts out there. We would love to have a trace program here, and we hope that's in our future soon. I want to turn our attention now to Tina. A question coming in from Andrea about autopsies, forensic pathologist training, and how that could interact with SANES. Do you have some thoughts there?
You know, our SANES have been used by our pathologists to gather evidence. It doesn't happen often. And that position for us seems to change quite often. So, you know, them knowing what is available, that can be an issue. And so it's something now that I can say, hey, Emily, you know, do you want to reach out and let them know what we do have available? Something I would say to any of the advocates sitting here, because I've seen a little bit about training components. Whether you're training detectives, whether you're training advocates, whether you're training nurses, counselors, whatever, most advocacy entities are nonprofits. We write grants. That's how we stay alive. If your grant allows, write those grants to create a community-based training and bring those trainers in and train those people in your community, whoever it is you're targeting. And then that also allows you to get that cross-training within your SART team, your MDT team, whatever team you're doing. And so I just wanted to kind of huck that out there as some of the stuff that I've been watching. The other thing I'd say is thank you all for the compliments. I've seen those pop up too. I appreciate what you're saying about our center, about our thought processes, and about our foundation. So, you know, as we talked about earlier, we still have some minor gaps. So I'll follow up with Emily and find out, you know, have we been doing anything recently with our pathologists? If not, let's touch base with them and let them know what we have available.
I love that answer, Tina, because we all do. We have a lot of work to do. And Deb's making notes here furiously as we're talking, which is the intention of this. It's a peer-to-peer event, and we're learning as much from this as anyone. So we need to reach out to our forensic pathologists too, make sure we have them on the statewide working group, and we're considering all those things. So great comments. Thanks, everyone. I want to turn to Deb now. Comments coming in from Jamie, or questions coming in from Jamie about how we're engaging individuals with disabilities, and then also from the victim services team posting in about cultural issues and sustainability. Can you address those?
Absolutely. Great questions, Jamie. And like Matthew just said, this really is peer-to-peer. And I appreciate the fact that Jamie is doing a lot more work than what we currently are doing with victims of disability. And she and I are actually going to touch base after this. So we are looking to expand that. We've brought someone onto our SACI who has history of working with patients with disabilities, and she has provided me a number of resources. So I've been able to reach out there. So although working with people with disabilities is included in the basic SANE training, I'm looking at expanding that. So I really want to thank Jamie for sharing her contact and the fact that we'll be getting to her to be able to expand that. The same thing goes with cultural considerations. That is part of the SANE training. We talk about special populations, and that's something that I really try to personalize as I'm out in each community. Some of our communities have tribes near or within that area. Others do not and may have other populations. And so as we talk about special populations across the nation, we try to bring that down. What are the special populations here in Idaho? And how can we really connect with them to learn what are their cultural needs? How important it is them? Do we have a woman that really feels that she can't have health care unless her husband or another male is there with us? And how do we meet those needs? And someone had asked too, what if anything has been done to address the reality that sometimes survivors, particularly the BIPOC, the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ survivors and families have a long history of distrust with law enforcement and other systems with the larger criminal justice process? That's a really important question. And not only, I would say, perhaps a level of distrust with law enforcement, but sometimes that extends to healthcare as well. And so we talk about that and say, take a look at your organization. What are you doing for these populations? Do you know, do we have the LGBT coming here? Are they comfortable? Do we know about the use of deadening? Do we know as healthcare providers, the things that we may be doing that really give the message that these people shouldn't come here because we don't know how to take care of them? So really talking about that, making that welcoming, recognizing the needs that they have as they come in. And then always, 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 the patient directs what they want done. So if we have a patient who comes in and she's like, I don't want to talk to law enforcement, I might feel like this was a horrendous crime and oh my goodness, law enforcement really needs to be in on this. Surely this would be a case that we could have prosecuted and get someone off the streets. But what I think doesn't matter. It really is what the patient needs. And if that patient has that long distrust, I am doing her or him a disservice by pressing them. And so we don't. The decision is, we ask, have you reported? Do you want to report? And if not, I'm going to support you 100% on it.
I know, Deb, our statewide working group is very focused this year. In fact, we met a few weeks ago to talk about how do we interface with the tribes in our state better. What resources do they need? What individuals can we contact there that will bring us the needs? And also LGBTQ and our Hispanic population, how do we engage those communities in a more proactive way? So great discussion. What we're going to talk about next is, I think we're going to a break now. So we'll take a few more questions after the next segment, but I think, Tyler, I'll throw it to you for a break.